Welcome to a special national team version of IJ Subito. We're going to break down whatever the heck it was that unfolded today in Bosnia. I still can't believe it. I'm your host, Andrew. I've got Sterling here with me. Sterling, thank you for hopping on and letting me vent about whatever today was.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now we get to talk about how we were supposed to go see Italy versus Canada in Toronto, and now you get to see Canada versus Bosnia instead.
Oh, God. This is just disappointing on so many levels. On like the biggest side of it, which is what you just said, which is I bought tickets. I have tickets to that first round's the opening match in Toronto that was supposed to be Italy versus Canada. And now I'm going to be forced to suffer through watching Miko's love child Zeko's corpse play against Bombito and the Canadian defense in a game that my heart just simply will not be in, because the entire time I'm going to be thinking I should be watching Italy right now. So disappointing on that level. And then that's not even getting into the emotional toll, the impact this is going to have on our club, on Inter. We have a lot to dive into, but for those of you wondering why are you talking about the Italian national team, I'd say big correlation, especially when there's such a heavy intercore in this national team. And plus, what happens at the Italian national team level really does trickle down to the clubs. There's a compounding effect. It talks about the infrastructure in the country, the youth development in the country. So beyond just myself being a fan of the Italian national team, if you're an Inter fan, this is relevant to you, regardless of whether you like the Italian national team or not. And I see a lot of Inter fans who openly hope the Italian national team will fail because they don't want our players on international duty, or they feel aggrieved because of the way the Italian media has treated Bastoni, which I do understand. But at the end of the day, a healthy Italy is only good for Inter. And really, Sterling, as someone who, you're not of Italian descent, but I do feel like, as you were mentioning to me just before we hopped on here, that you kind of take a similar perspective of having a vested interest in this team.
Yeah, unfortunately, I do. I feel like the way that they play at the national team directly correlates with the confidence that they play with at Inter, and sometimes that's vice versa as well. I feel like when we were playing great under Inzaghi, you saw some much better performances from them when they were in the Azzurri jersey as well. But the truth is that there's some mental fragility in this team, um, and that be it Inter, also in Italy. And unfortunately, when I look at the Inter players, it's hard for me not to point some fingers in that direction. I mean, we can go ahead and just get right into it. I mean, what happened today with the Bastoni red card is what really throws this whole thing into a tizzy. I will say that there was a really poor clearance from, and it wasn't even a clearance; it was a goal kick from Donnarumma, who world class goalkeeper, but for whatever reason couldn't kick the ball today. Um, and obviously it leads directly to the ball coming right back down the center, and puts Bastoni in not a great position. He's not a pacey player. Number one, he probably shouldn't even be playing in that position. He's never looked comfortable in the center of a back three. Why Gattuso decided that now, when Italy's World Cup hopes were on the line, that in two crunch matches he wanted to play him in the center of a back three, I have no idea. He could have played Gatti there. Um, there's a number of players in Italy I probably would have chosen before I would have chosen to play Bastoni there. You got to play Bastoni at the left center back position, or you just don't play him at all in reality. And yeah, I mean, he was put in a bad position, but he made a terrible mistake. And that, again, to me, goes down to mentality. It always seemed like Italy was going to find a way to mess this up. Um, if it wasn't Bastoni, it probably would have been somebody else, but it just seems like, for whatever reason, particularly these Inter players, are really prone to mental lapses at the moment. Um, I think actually Barella had a decent game today, but I didn't think DeMarco covered himself in much glory. He had a chance that he spurned as well. Um, That's the thing, is that Italy had some chances to put this game to bed today, but again, I think there's just some mental fragility, and it's not just the Inter players. Let me be very clear. A lot of these guys seem to be playing with this complex of fear. The jersey is heavy, as they say. There's a lot of fear about not making it for a third World Cup, and guess what, man? Your fears came true. You found a way to do it. So. Um, Even as a casual Azzurri supporter, I mean, I'm an American. I follow the United States men's national team. I mean, we're not much to write home about either. But again, Italy kind of becomes my de facto second team as an Inter fan, and it's just wildly disappointing, man. A whole generation of Italian talent, of Inter players that are Italian, basically that they'll never get to be in a World Cup. Maybe some of these guys will be the elder statesmen of the next team if they make it. But yeah, it's just really shocking that a country with such a storied history can find a way to miss three consecutive World Cups. It's gonna be 16 years by the time the next World Cup rolls around since Italy was last in a World Cup. That's insane.
And if we're lucky, we'll be at that World Cup.
Well, good
This
news
one
is they're going to
hurt.
expand it.
Yeah, add more teams. The the reason why this one hurts so much for me on a personal level is just Italy was like my launching pad into the sport. And, growing up in Canada, the Canadian national team has always been complete garbage. Like they did not go to a World Cup from like the 80s until 2022. So naturally, you pick the team which you have the closest ties to, which for me is obviously Italy, having grandparents who were born there. And it was really my first foray into the sport. 2006 is some of the first time I ever watched football. It was some of the first time I really got into the competition. My dad was always an Inter fan, but like I'd never really paid attention. And then, 2006 really sparked something in me, and it led to me becoming an Inter follower and everything else. But to think about how far we've come from 2006 until now, where we're staring at three failed World Cup qualifications in a row in the face, it's incomprehensible. And we can talk about today's match. I mean, the Bastoni incident is a thing everyone's going to want to talk about, especially because of one, the circumstance, how he has been treated by the Italian media in the aftermath of the Kalulu incident. He's been getting whistled at every away ground since the incident, as you all know. Now for him to go out and make a just substantial match-altering mistake, it's only going to compound the issue. I don't want to bring the Barcelona stuff to discussion, but you hear the grumblings about that, and you do have to wonder in the back of your mind, is this guy going to stay in Italy right now? Because it was an embarrassing mistake from Bastoni, and I'm sympathetic to him because if you've ever played the sport, when you're playing in defense, you have to make split-second decisions, and he made the wrong decision. And I get it when it's a one-on-one, one-on-none, and if you don't, dispossess the attacking player, he's going to have a one-on-one with the keeper. Like you want to intervene, but clearly he got it all wrong. He missed the ball, and in hindsight, he would have been better off pulling back, letting one of the best goalkeepers in the world try and diffuse the situation. And worst case, you tie it up 1-1. At least you're full strength, and you go out and you look for a winner. Instead, it was just immediate horrible situation to be in, where you're going to be playing 45, 50 minutes now with only 10 men, and then you end up going to extra time, and it was a disaster. And we can talk about the lineups, we can talk about Gattuso and all that stuff, but it was a poor showing from most of the Inter contingent. Barella was great, but Barella is one of the best players on the pitch for Italy today. The problem was everyone else. DeMarco had an exceptionally poor game. He desperately needed to be subbed off. Frattesi had it's pretty much a standard Inter cameo where he comes in off the bench for Barella and doesn't do anything of note. And then it's unfortunate for Pio, because Pio actually had a really nice game. Like watching this match, I really felt like Pio should have been the one who started over Retegui. I know I'm a certified Retegui hater, always will be, but I thought Pio had a really nice game. He had a couple of dangerous attacking chances while he was on the pitch, and then it's just all for naught because of the penalty. And I will just say, I know I'm bouncing all over the place here, but I will say on the penalty situation, it is absurd that they sent out a 20-year-old who has never taken a professional penalty as your first taker. And I first guessed that decision. 100% of the time, you trot out Tonali, you let him calm things down, and you let someone experienced take that first penalty. to send out a 20-year-old kid is just mind-boggling. And Pio's never taken a penalty for Inter before, let alone Italy in the biggest game in Italy's like cycle.
Yeah, that made absolutely no sense. I mean, listen, Gattuso never should have been in charge of this team in the first place, and the fact that I hear Gravina saying that he wants Gattuso to stay in charge after today is insane, and it's the reason why Italy's missed 3 World Cups, because that guy is in charge, and he obviously does not care. Um, you First, there's a lot of things, and we could probably do a quick rundown of all that's wrong with Italy when it comes to the national team. But first things first, get a good coach in there. Get somebody who's actually experienced. And Italy's the land of coaches. There's plenty of opportunities for some of these younger guys who maybe are between jobs at the club level to step in and do a job at the Azzurri. For example, they could have gone out and gotten Palladino when he was available before he took the Atalanta job. There's actually legitimately decent coaches floating all over the peninsula, and you chose Gattuso. I understand that maybe international football is not the sexiest job in the world, and a lot of countries end up with second-rate coaches, but Gattuso's not even a second-rate coach. Gattuso's failed everywhere he's been. Name a successful Gattuso coaching stint. You can't do it because it doesn't exist. How this guy becomes I don't know if you want to call him a caretaker. I don't know what you want to call the situation that they thrust him into here, but I mean, after Spalletti, who at least, I mean, yeah, it didn't go well, but at least he was an experienced coach, to then go to this guy who's a mascot. I just don't understand what the thought process is from the FIGC. So that's the first thing. At least get somebody who can work with what you have and put something decent out in terms of a product, because he's just not it. I mean, then from there you can talk about player selection and things of that nature. I think that Italy needs to once again turn the page, once again needs to go a bit younger. I think that in the second half there you saw the only players that looked like they were going to create anything were Palestra and Pia. And so again, why those players weren't already starting, I have no idea. I think that most players would be, I think that most countries would have started, those younger guys just based on purely talent alone. I'm sure Spain would have. I'm sure France would have. Italy needs to stop getting in its own way when it comes to the talent that it does produce. Because here's the thing, I think that it's easy to point and say, hey, Italy's not producing talented players, but when you look at the results from the youth national teams, they're pretty good. U17 World Cup, U20 Euros. Italy performs pretty well at those tournaments. Does that mean that you have a bunch of world beaters down there? No. Does it mean that you have a Lamine Yamal that you just haven't discovered? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that you're going to have, the guys that you had in those previous generations. I don't know if there's a Del Piero running around, but you send all of these kids away to Serie B and Serie C to quote unquote do their apprenticeship. They need to be playing real football matches. They need to be playing in Serie A. They need to be improving. They need to be given opportunities. And quite frankly, this country just refuses to do it. And it's something prevalent throughout from top to bottom. I've never seen anything like it. There's no other country in Europe that's like this. Every other country is okay playing a 19-year-old from the start, playing an 18-year-old from the start. For some reason in Italy, you can't do it, and you baby them. And look, I think we're obviously we had to be fair here, right? Because we're talking about Pio and that he should never have been the one to take the penalty kick and whatnot. But at the same time, maybe he should have already had experience. Maybe he should have already kicked a penalty for Inter in Serie A. Maybe he should have already been playing in this league for a couple of seasons. Because I guarantee you, if he was a talent at that level elsewhere, that wouldn't have been his first professional penalty. I mean, I think that there's a lot that needs to be worked on in this league in general, from the infrastructure to the TV rights to all this type of stuff. But first, I think that the things that they can control, they just don't control. And it's like, just use the talent that you actually have and produce. And one more thing I'll say is, you look at the kid from Brentford, for example, whose name is escaping me right now, young black kid who plays at Brentford and who's been having a fantastic season. Michael Coyote is his name. Played at Fiorentina, couldn't touch the field at Fiorentina. sat there for a year and a half after having a wonderful performance for the youth national team in a tournament. Everyone thought that this kid was going to be a big deal. Didn't touch the field, immediately goes to the EPL, is thrust into the starting lineup, never comes back out. Now everyone's ranting and raving about him. And that guy, it has to be in the squad, right? That's somebody who could play in that right center back role, so you don't have Mancini, who's getting dragged all over the place left and right and can't stay with a winger to save his life. But there's a fear, for whatever reason, in this country to play a young athletic player who's playing week in, week out in the EPL. That makes no sense. Like, I just don't understand it. So, Italy has issues for sure, but I don't think the issues are necessarily as deep at the player development level as many people think it is. But the decision making across the board in this country just continuously shoots them in the foot again and again and again.
I do not think Italy has a talent problem. I acknowledge that if I were to make a list of like the 10 best players in the world, the 15 best players in the world right now, I would not include an Italian bar Donnarumma as the best keeper. I get all that. This country won a Euro 5 years ago. There is plenty of talent in Italy. I do think there was a gross mismanagement of the team over the course of this cycle. I hate Spalletti. I hate Spalletti with every bone in my body. And I think he broke this thing at the previous Euro when he didn't know what he was doing and he was flipping back and forth between formations during matches. And he couldn't make up his mind if he wanted a 4 at the back or a 3 at the back. He couldn't figure out which players he wanted in the team, out of the team, if he wanted to use Jorginho, if he wanted to use Fagioli. Like, he didn't know what he was doing. And it just set a really bad path for this team in qualification, and it put Gattuso in a really bad spot. I completely agree with everything you said, that Gattuso should have never been given this job. And it's painful for me to look and see Ancelotti is coaching the Brazilian national team and instead of the Italian national team. Like, there was such a huge amount of quality Italian managers. I mean, I'm the first guy to make fun of De Zerbi. Compare his resume to Gattuso, it's not even close. Like, there are so many talented Italian managers out there. Maybe we can bring Inzaghi home from Saudi and give him the national team. I don't know. But the point being, Gattuso should have never been put in this spot. All things considered, Gattuso did as well as he could have done. I have many issues with the lineups and the players he selected for this match. I'm happy to talk about it. But look at what he did at the end of the day. He did something we weren't able to do under Mancini, which is he won the first of these European knockout games in the qualifier rounds. And then he went and he had the lead late in the first half, and his team blew it. And I'm ultimately holding the players responsible for that, because as much as, like I said, I have issues with the lack of tactical acumen of this team and the player selections, at the end of the day, what do you want him to do? It's not Gattuso's fault Bastoni got himself sent off. It's not Gattuso's fault that he doesn't have enough proven penalty takers. So he really did the job. And after this team went down to 10 men and we had the 1-0 lead, like, he basically had the second best case scenario. First best case scenario is you see it out, you win 1-0. Second best is you get this thing to penalties, because realistically you're not scoring. So Gattuso did the job. Do I want to see him continue? No. Do I think he's a good manager? No. But really, what more could have I expected from him in the situation? The player thing is an issue, and I there was just this gross problem in the country of not understanding or knowing how to use their talent. Palestra is the single most talented wingback I've watched this year. He has looked phenomenal for Cagliari. He has looked phenomenal when he's played for Italy. And somehow this guy is being benched at right wingback in the Italian national team by Politano, who has been a right winger his entire career. This fucking guy sucks, man. Politano's career is finished, and somehow he is getting starts at right wingback in a key knockout game. The Bastoni Calafiori thing has never made sense, and I really blame Spalletti for starting this trend. Why are you trying to play two ball-playing left center backs together? I don't want to get lost in the weeds here, because there is so much wrong at a structural level. But this team has enough talent to beat Bosnia. This team has enough talent to beat North Macedonia. And the fact that they're not is just coaching failures and managerial failures and poor squad construction. But if I get to your second and your more important points about the way youth is treated in this country, it's impossible not to agree with you. I mean, Inter is the perfect evidence of that. Last year, we trotting out the hilarious triumvirate of Correa and Arnautovic and Taremi when we knew all three of these guys couldn't play. If this was England, if this was the Netherlands, if this was Germany, you know what they would have done? They would have sent those guys out to pasture. They would have taken DiPieri off the youth team and they would have said, go get them. And they would have given the kid a shot. But that's not how we do things in this country because we just assume that all these guys can't play. We assume that all these guys are going to cost us matches. And it's a development thing. I mean, think about the minutes and the resources Inter as a club and the Italian, football system as a whole wasted developing a player like Aslani. I'm going to pick on Aslani just to try and prove a point, which is imagine if instead we dedicated those minutes to an Italian talent who maybe wasn't quite as good as Aslani at the start, but has the potential to grow into something. And this is really my problem when I look at the way we treat, we being Inter specifically, but you can apply this to the Italian ecosystem as a whole. Think about how we treat our young Italian players, and it's their plus Valenza fodder. That's all we use them for. We're using these kids to make capital gains to balance the books. We have no intents on using them. And there's a very real question that can be asked of if you take a player, and I'm picking random players, pick whichever mediocre Italian player you want and apply this logic. If I take someone like Pinamonti or I take someone like Seba Esposito, who by no means have ever flashed potential to be great world-class players, but if I would have properly nurtured those players and given those players top league minutes and tried to integrate them into the squad, what would they be today instead of what we have? We don't nurture their talents. And I'm not saying these guys are world beaters, but you need to build up the depth of the system. You need to build up the pool of players. And the only way you do that is with minutes, is with action, is with game time. And that's just something we don't do. And you hinted at it. We're kind of making fun of Allegri, who once made a comment that you need to cut your teeth down in Serie C before you can go ahead and get your minutes in Serie A. And it doesn't work that way anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the world, you're immediately given opportunities if you're young and talented. And what's the worst that can happen, man? The pressure of making a mistake.
The World Cup.
Yeah, really. Can it get worse? So I don't know what the answer is. Is the answer that you need to impose limits on these guys? Do we need to make limits on the amount of foreigners allowed in squads? Do we need to mandate a number of Italians in squads? How do you get these guys out of their habits? Because it's not like these are foreign managers who are doing this. These are Italian managers like Inzaghi and Allegri who are neglecting Italian talent. The talent is there, just it's not ever given the opportunity to fail. It's not given the opportunity to grow. And like I said, it's the reason why we're sitting here. It is March 31st, and I just have to watch Mancini and Cristante and all these other mediocre players play meaningful minutes for Italy.
Yeah, no, and it is a really good question. But I think to turn the page on what Italy needs to do moving forward, I do think that there needs to be some type of a little bit of the changing of the guard here. I think that the team does need to get a bit younger. I think that, if you're Italy now, you have to start planning towards, I guess the Euro will be here in 2 years. So I guess you could start working towards that as an intermediate goal, but you need to start working towards what it's going to look like in another 4 years from now. And again, the good news for Italy is that if you look at the performance of the youth teams for the last 3 or 4 years, talent is somewhere. So it's just up to you to go find it. Hopefully it's not stunted already by playing in Serie B and Serie C. But if you can go find that talent and give it opportunities to grow, talent plus opportunity over a long period of time is just undefeated. There's no problem with the level of Serie A in terms of, is it challenging enough to be able to develop good talent? This league, despite it doing its best not to, still manages to develop good talent. It's like you have guys like Nico Paz who, they step in here and they develop really well over, a season or two in this league. There are all those types of players that can break through here. But again, you're talking about a kid who came at 19 and was immediately given the opportunity to play consistent minutes, and that just doesn't happen enough in this country. So, that's the thing that I think that Italy needs to take a look at is how do we start to give these guys opportunities, and they need to start giving them opportunities, honestly, in the national team. If the club is going to be hesitant to want to do it themselves, then, whoever the national team manager is really should start to look at some of these talents as they come out of U21 Italy, and they should be putting him in the team. Guys like Coyote, again, like he needs to be in the team immediately. Guys like Honest Ahanor need to be in the team immediately. This is modern football. You need athleticism as well. Italy was getting dragged all over the park today, every which way, every time that the ball was coming forward. And I hate to say it to Marco, was at sea out there. You need to go ahead and turn the page. You need to let some of these players in who, and not to make it I'm like dancing around what what I kind of want to say here,
I understand what you're saying. It's crystal clear.
Yeah, it's like they got to let it happen. It's just, it can't be just Mario anymore. They got to let it happen. A lot needs to change.
There's a discussion I don't want to have, especially not on this podcast, because I don't know what I'm talking about when I say this. But there is a point to be made when you look at like the demographics of the English national team and the French national team, and you see all these guys in national teams who aren't Italian, and their background is they were born to African parents in France, in England, whatever, and they play for the French national team. And like those players do not exist in Italy, or if they exist, they do not play for Italy, really. And I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to offer any insights as to why that may or may not be happening. But like, does that make a difference at the end of the day? Probably. Like, it's hard to argue.
Here's the thing, though, Andrew, is that they do exist in the youth teams. If you look at the youth teams, they are there and they are playing. Something happens between the youth teams and the senior team, and these players are just never seen again. Now, again, there's some now that, like Honest Ahanor, they're not going to be able to ignore him. Like, let's say with Coyote, they're not going to be able to ignore them because they've broken through and they're playing legitimate minutes. So their time is coming, but that's going to it has to happen more and more. This is modern football. It has to happen.
It absolutely has to. And the thing that gets me is like there are players I can point to who are under the age of 25 and Italian who I'm excited about, and I think they can play. And I think they're going to develop into really good players. And these are the players I like want to see them build the national team around. And I want to see this, when I hear that Gattuso is trying to call up Verratti or Jorginho for this European playoff spot, as was reported in the media during January and February, it makes me sick to my stomach, because that's just like, that is the classic Italian move. It's when in doubt, turn to the old hand instead of just letting this generational shift happen. And if I'm being completely honest and also cynical, I don't know. I know nothing is going to change, because this has now happened 3 times. And the 2 previous times, there was pretty much zero action taken to correct this. So I have no faith that
they're going to get. They want to keep Gattuso.
Yeah.
Enough said. See you in 4 years.
Like, this country won a Euro 5 years ago. I just have to keep saying that. This country won a Euro 5 years ago. It's honestly harder to win a Euro than a World Cup. The teams in a Euro are better than the teams in a World Cup.
Yeah.
I don't know. The next question, I guess, is what this means for Inter. We have all these guys who were part of this collapse today who are now going to be coming back to Inter, and they're going to be asked to perform, and you just know the criticism they're going to be facing is unbearable. And because they play for Inter, they'll probably face more than your average Milan, Milan doesn't have any Italian players, but they'll face more than your average Juve or Roma player. And how do you deal with that pressure? How does Kivu not let this World Cup failure turn into a Scudetto collapse? And I have little faith we're going to avoid that destiny. But it's the question that needs to be solved. You have, like key pillars on this team who are going to have to get over this in time for a match against Roma this weekend. It's a big ask. And Antonio, who was on the podcast earlier this year, made a point after this match today. And he's like, I would not play a single Italian player in the game against Roma this weekend.
I would consider it. I,
I,
I
I
would
totally
genuinely
get the
consider it.
point.
It's like
Because
I definitely wouldn't play. Well, I probably wouldn't play Bastoni.
you have to, though, because I think Augusto's hurt.
Jesus. Okay. Well, I guess you got to play both Bastoni and DeMarco then, because without Augusto, there's really no other person that you trust over there. Um, yeah, but Bastoni especially, I'm a little concerned for him. Um, I think that he responded pretty well to some of the being booed in regards to the Kalulu incident, but this is going to be a lot different. It's going to be really there's going to be a lot of vitriol that's going to come at him from the press and also just the world in general. I'd hope he stays off of his cell phone for a good week or two. Um, because I mean, it's almost impossible for a player to run from the social media aspect of things these days. And like, I opened up Twitter shortly after the game today and did some quick scrolling, and like immediately in the first 10 posts I saw, five of them mentioned Bastoni by name. Um, and so that's like that's tough when you know the world is talking about you, and you know you let your country down. And again, it's not just him ultimately, but it's a lot of him, right? It's like they can point to one moment, and unfortunately, he's going to be the poster boy for Italy making history in the worst way by missing their third consecutive World Cup. As there's never been a team that's been a winner of World Cups that has missed three in a row. It's just not something that ever happens. So he's going to have to wear that, and to make it a bigger picture thing here, you start to really worry about our core of Italians in general, and where they are going to be mentally moving forward. Because when you start to stack up their CVs now, there's some massive losses and some massive disappointments that they were heavily involved in. The Champions League final a year ago, the worst loss of all time. Now they're going on, for a lot of these guys, they probably weren't involved the first time that Italy missed a World Cup, but they've certainly been involved in the last two. Stoney was directly involved in the issue today. I would even argue that DeMarco was directly involved in the issue today. I didn't think he had a good game. The goal
Theo,
came
of
from his
course.
side as well. And now, yeah, and of course, and now Pio, um, you worry what that does to a 20-year-old's confidence, who's having a great season for a 20-year-old with the minutes that he's been given. And should have been a starter today, but wasn't. But for him to now miss a penalty in the shootout that sends Italy out of the World Cup, I mean, you just really start to concern yourself about what it means for Inter long term, because these are the players that we're hitching our wagon to. It's pretty clear that way from management. I don't think that there's going to be any big sale of an Italian player. If it does happen, it probably will be Bastoni, because there's obvious interest from Barcelona and other clubs around Europe, and I do think that he probably be the most willing to go. But the core of this team is going to remain as long as Morata is at the helm. He's not a guy who does big locker room shifts. He does it gradually over time, and that's part of why he's had so much success, to be honest, because he's very stable. His clubs always have stability, while everybody else around them is very up and down and all around. They have good years, they have bad years, they're all over the place. But his teams are always consistently around that first and second place year in, year out, because he doesn't change things unless he has to. He doesn't just change things to change things. So, what happens now with all these guys who, quite frankly, are used to choking in really, really big moments? These are the guys that you have as your senators in your dressing room, and these are the guys that you want to be protagonists of your team. That's a scary thought for a team that doesn't have a lot of money to invest and replace big names in the squad.
And that's really it's the curse of Morata in a sense. Where you look at our competition in recent years. I mean, Napoli won a Scudetto and promptly missed the Champions League. You had Milan won a Scudetto a couple years ago, recently missed the Champions League. Juve very much. They haven't won a Scudetto in years, and now they're looking at another Champions League failure, perhaps. We haven't had that yo-yo-ness. We've had this stability, and while we haven't won as many trophies as we'd hoped, we've seen the other side of this mountain. We know how bad things can get, and we've avoided that fate. And as much as I'll be the first person to get in line and complain about all our sufferings, and yeah, it sucks to lose 2 Champions League finals, including a humiliation in one of them. Like, we made Champions League finals, and Morata deserves credit for that. And this Italian core we have deserves credit for that. The problem is, what do they have left? How many times has this happened to them before you realize that they're never climbing the mountain? They're never going to recover from it. And there will be some natural attrition. I think we all know Fratese's leaving. He'll be the first one to go. Maybe these Bastoni rumors turn into something and he also leaves. I doubt it, but there's a possibility. So maybe there's some room for some natural attrition with the Italian core there. But I will say, I saw some people who just commenting broadly, like, why do you even care if Italy qualifies for the World Cup? Clearly, they're not going to win it if they qualify. And it's just about getting the monkey off your back, man. When you have all these things keep stacking and stacking and stacking, and it's just another internal pressure you have to deal with as a player, it compounds. And it makes the situation worse, and it makes you tight. And this team, this group of players desperately needed something to go their way. And today against Bosnia was truly an opportunity to right the ship. And if they would have qualified for this, get some wind in their sails and feel good about themselves heading into this home stretch. And instead now it's, Roma's not free of this either. Us and Roma have these core of Italian players who are going to have to recover from this in time for the weekend. The one thing which I did not mention during my earlier spiel, which I want to mention is, dude, that Moise Kean miss in the second half when he had a one-on-none, one-on-one breakaway.
Yikes.
That thing haunts me, man. That was the game if he could have buried that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is that Italy did have some chances, actually, to put this thing to bed. I think that chance obviously was a really good one. Again, there was a DeMarco one. Even the Pio one, where I got to give it to Murahimovic. He really put his body on the line there. And I think Pio was actually going to end up dragging it wide. He was a little bit off balance, but, there were chances for Italy to score the second and put this to bed, but again, they just couldn't get it done. And I think a lot of it just comes down to mentality and the pressure and the weight of the jersey after, now 3 missed World Cups.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap this thing up there. Sterling, I'll get a Roma Inter prediction from you before we head out.
Oh, God. I'm glad you reminded me that they also have some players that are not going to be in a good way. Cristante, Mancini, they got some players that were involved in this mess as well. I got to predict an Inter win because I just need it. I can't have these guys dropping points again, and all of a sudden Milan is like 4 points behind us or something like that. Like, that would just be miserable. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 victory for Inter.
I hope you're right, man. I hope you can hear the defeat in my voice, but yeah, just give me a 3-2 Inter win purely based off of vibes. I hope we get the job done, man. I really do. I'll ask for a bonus prediction of the Milan-Napoli game while I've got you.
Oh, is that this weekend as well?
It is also this weekend.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Napoli's going to win. I think Napoli's
Really?
going to win. Yeah.
You're bringing some juice.
Yeah. I think Napoli has actually looked really good recently. Milan actually does play really well in the big matches, so that's the one thing I will say, is they seem to do better in the big matches than in the small matches. But I like Napoli here. I think that they'll get it done. I'm gonna say 2-0 for Napoli.
There's some fun happening at Napoli right now. I don't know if you've been seeing this Lukaku stuff and him.
Yeah, what's going on there? I have no idea. I haven't really been paying attention. I know I think he's supposed to go away with the Belgian national team, then maybe he didn't go away, but he stayed in Belgium or something going on with his injury.
It sounds like he's refusing to return from Belgium to Italy. Concerns about maybe how his injury was being treated in Naples. I heard
a mountain healer over there.
Yeah, they have a mountain healer there. De Bruyne, I heard, had maybe similar complaints. I don't know. There's a lot of noise around Napoli right now, but I respect the hell out of Conte, man. When it comes to getting the mentality right for these games, he knows how to grind results. I'm gonna go straight wish casting mode. Give me a filthy 0-0 draw between Milan and Napoli, which will put us, coupled with an Inter win, what would that point is 8 points clear, lock up the Scudetto.
Yeah.
I need it, man. Please,
If
please
that
give it
if
to
that
me.
happens, I do think that the Scudetto's in the bag. If we can beat Roma and there's a draw there, I think that puts us in a really good position. I think Napoli will. I don't think that Milan's going to score because I just feel like Milan's front line, Pulisic. I don't know if you've been watching that guy recently. I watched him play for the United States, and he was garbage. He can't hit the broadside of a barn right now. Super low confidence. And then you have Leao, who throws tantrums every time he's on the field. So between those two as your starting lineup, I just don't see where the goals are going to come from for Milan right now. Um, meanwhile, I think that was it Hoyland. I think he could pop up with a goal.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thanks again, Sterling, for doing the Italian deep dive with me. Please do the honors.
Forza Inter, Forza Italia.